Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another insect video. Today we're going to be... Hi Mars, what are you doing? Today we're going to be having a look at feeder crickets. A couple of the most common questions I see about feeder crickets is how to keep them healthy so you know that you're feeding your reptiles healthy food, and how to keep them so they live long enough so that you get to feed them off to your reptiles. So today's video is how to set up your feeder crickets, and we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing we're going to need is our enclosure. This is a sterilite container. It is definitely on the larger side. You can find smaller cricket keepers at Petco, but I definitely recommend going bigger, particularly if you want to keep 30 upwards in numbers of crickets. Now this is because crickets are both territorial and cannibalistic. They do compete for resources, including females, and so the males will attack and kill each other, and the bigger space that you provide, the more you can minimalize that essentially. So here I have a nice big sterilite container. I use this over and over again. This particular one I think has been going strong for a couple of years now, and in between batches of crickets I just clean it out with a solution of water and white vinegar. Now this particular sterilite container does have the locking handles on the side. These are definitely not necessary to keep your crickets in. However, it is just a nice safeguard, particularly if you have dogs like I do. The next thing you're going to need is ventilation. So we ventilate our cricket enclosures not just for air for them to breathe, but of course so we don't create a toxic environment. To create ventilation, all I did here was take a hot knife and cut a hole into the lid, and then I took screen mesh and duct taped it in. These are actually scrap pieces, small pieces, that's why there's so much duct tape. It's definitely not pretty, but it's functional. So now we have our ventilated enclosure, we need to add some substrate. I highly recommend going for a paper towel. I definitely recommend that you have substrate, absolutely. Crickets are stinky, it helps with the smell, but this also helps to catch and absorb their waste, and you'll find that they do poop a heck of a lot. This is also really cheap and easy to clean out, and if you're not managing to feed your crickets off in, say, a week, then I recommend cleaning your crickets at least once a week. So after laying down a couple of layers of paper towel, you're going to need some hides for your crickets. And as you can tell, my husband and I eat a lot of Cliff Bars. So when it comes to hides, you definitely don't need to buy anything fancy, expensive from the pet shops. You can just use old cardboard. This is just some empty boxes out of my recycling. Now when you are doing this, you must make sure they are clean and dry. So these boxes, for example, had wrapped Cliff Bars in them, so no food has actually touched this. So just make sure you're introducing clean and dry recycling. I pretty much grab and shape whatever I have around, as well as Cliff Bar boxes like this, which are, like I say, very popular in my house, always on hand. I also use kitchen roll tubes and egg cartons as well. When crickets aren't out and about exploring and eating, they do really like to hide away. And again, from a resource point of view, it's really important that you provide a lot of hides for your crickets to make sure that they can get away from each other if they're experiencing competition. So this is what my setup is looking like at the moment. I have these boxes stood up at an angle with like little flaps holding them up and creating a doorway. This guy who's leant down, I've just ripped out a doorway into it, works really well. And then I have a couple of the tubes in here as well. So as I was saying about the cricket keepers earlier, they're a smaller container, smaller plastic container, and they have two tubes that sort of run into the container with caps on the end. And this works really well, even though I don't like the size of them. It works really well because the crickets do love to hide in the tubes. And so if you throw a toilet roll tube, but preferably something longer, like this kitchen roll tube, into your sterilite container, the crickets will use it. So the first thing I look at when I'm going to pull some out to feed some off to my animals is I go straight for the tube, and then I can just tap the tube out into a jar that I mix supplements in. And it's a super easy way. Anyway, quick tip for you of how to catch crickets easily. The next step is going to be to feed and hydrate our crickets. Again, you don't have to buy anything fancy. to use as bowls. These are, again, from my recycling. I have sauce lids and a jam jar lid or a jelly lid. And all you have to do is clean these out and you've got essentially free cricket dishes. I use these bowls for wet foods, essentially anything that might dirty up the enclosure and absorb into the substrate. Today I have a mixture of fresh carrots and sliced orange or clementine, and then in this last bowl I do have cricket quencher. Now this stuff is something that I use very sparingly. I definitely don't buy it often. I only actually use it the first day that the crickets come home from the pet store. Crickets in pet stores aren't kept with enough hydration, and so they're incredibly thirsty when they come home. The fruit and veg will definitely provide hydration, but just for that first day, I provide a little bit of cricket quencher as well. Now, although the fruits and veg do supply some vitamins and hydration, you will also need a source of protein for your crickets. I use tropical fish flakes. Now, when it comes to choosing a fish flake, you don't have to buy anything expensive. I just go for something very basic. It is made with shrimp protein. It actually also has spinach and other vitamins and minerals in there as well. Crickets do need a source of protein to develop properly. And again, providing a source of protein is also going to help reduce that cannibalism. For the fish flakes, I just sprinkle them into the enclosure onto the substrate. It is dry and the crickets will clear them up very, very quickly. They are ravenous for this stuff. And again, by spreading it around with my colonies of crickets, I really find that it helps them not fight among themselves and just generally live longer, which of course gives me more time to feed them off to my reptiles. You'll see that I'm quite liberal with the fish flakes. It's definitely more than I would feed my fish. I will add, by the way, I don't feed my fish cheap food, but you know what I mean. So there we are, there's the finished enclosure, and now it's time to add some crickets. Just before we wrap up the video, I wanted to mention heating and lighting. You don't actually need any additional heat or light sources for just keeping a colony as you're feeding them off to your animals. I keep mine at room temperature and in a slightly dark area under a table. I will only get into adding supplemental heating when I want to breed crickets. So that is the cheap and easy way to set up a colony of feeder crickets and hopefully get a nice long life out of them to give you time to feed them all off to your animals. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will try and get back to you. And thank you for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye!